one, and here we go. Welcome on my first step ever. In this virtual studio, what we discuss is something that helps you become more of yourself. There is a lot of noise out there, my friends, which will tell you that what you should be doing in your life. But what you should be doing is something has to be defined by your inner voice, yourself, and your inner calling. But often we ignore that voice because we think that maybe it's not very conventional, or maybe it's not a secure path, or maybe that's what people are asking us not to do because they might have found something which is not right on the path. But often, if you listen to the stories on my first step ever, you realize it's only when you follow your heart, you follow the path, you have an actionable step, a roadmap ready, and you act on it, is when you actually realize a life that is worth your living. So let's welcome one such gem on this planet Earth who has done that today on my first step ever. And I'm so excited to have him over here. Shihan Wayne MacDonald, all the way from Australia. Shihan, welcome on my first step ever.
Thank you. What a great introduction. I love the way you led into that. That was fantastic.
It's just completely my honors, and I know definitely there are people who may know you by your name already now. For the ones who are getting introduced to this marvel today, I'm going to give a little bit of a sneak peek of who he is and the kind of impact that he has been having on the world. So, welcome to my first step ever, the podcast where we dive into the journeys of leaders, champions, game changers who have turned their steps into a lifelong legacy. Today, I am speaking with someone whose discipline, drive, and passion have taken him to the very top of the spot. He is, as I mentioned, Shihan Wayne MacDonald. So, Wayne, he's a three-time karate world champion, seventh Dan black belt, and world chief instructor of karate, Budokan International. Now, I'm really sorry. This is a very new word for me, and I have Googled this, but we're going to learn more about this soon. Wayne has represented Australia on the world stage. Now, you won't guess this number. In fact, I would really like to kind of have you think the number of times he has represented Australia on the world stage. 15 times over 17 years, and coached national teams and built a global karate community spanning more than 9 countries. So his impact is widespread. Now, from being the youngest member of Australian senior karate team to mentoring thousands of students in self-esteem, reliance, and excellence, Wayne's journey is one of the grit, mastery, and impact. He's not just the teaching. He is not just teaching karate. He's shaping leaders, athletes, and confident human beings across generations. So, in this episode, we explore the mindset of a champion, the courage to step into leadership, and how principles of martial arts can empower every area of our life. Now, before we begin, I like to tell my listeners and everyone who's watching today, I am a little under the weather, so please forgive me if I fumble, if I cough or anything. But hey, that's very human and that's how life is. So let's begin today. Wayne, once again, welcome on this virtual studios. And my first question to you is, we would love to trace our steps back into your amazing childhood, long time back. Let us know, where were you born and what kind of mindset of the people that you were surrounded with, around your childhood days.
Okay, great answer. Now, I might have sent you an old bio there because I'm an 8th Dan black belt now. So I've actually I've graduated since that one. Yeah, I've just bumped up. Yeah, great question. And my childhood I was born in northwest of Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. And I was born to a lovely woman named Florence. And when I was around 4, my mum and dad split and she took me home. So I was actually raised by 3 women. I was raised by my mother, my aunt, and my grandmother. So a lot of the empathy I think I've learnt over the years came from that early raising from 3 amazing women who taught me not only how to have resilience, but also taught me how to actually think of other people first, which is probably what really helped later on when I became an instructor, because the best part of teaching and the most important part of teaching, I think, is empathy. so I could put myself in other people's shoes, which probably was one of the reasons I became successful in the coaching arena as well as the actual competition side.
When one thing straight out there, so I'm not demeriting any male figure which is around while you're growing up, but I definitely want to emphasize this, having three strong female figures that help you, not only help you kind of enable that quality of nurturing, empathy, as you mentioned, but also a different way of looking at life, which is more perspective, a little more sensitive, and you're able to kind of get into the emotions, or the mind or heart of people, which even a lot of men can do. No questions over there. We have Wayne over here, the product of that. So Wayne, as you mentioned, that you definitely had quite a strong foundation while growing up, emotionally and mentally. And when you, and now we can see that reflects in your profession. How do you see yourself back now, if you reflect, what kind of a young lad were you growing into? What kind of experiences were you going through? What were your observations about yourself and life at that point in time?
Yeah, it's great to reflect, actually, because I obviously, one of my big proud things in my life is I've created a anti-bullying program. But when I think back to myself, probably from the age of 8 to 12, I was being bullied at school myself. Obviously, I wasn't very big. I was red hair, typical, small stature, and I was an easy target for bullies because I didn't have the self-esteem. But fortunately for me, karate came around about my 11 to 12-year up mark. And once I started the martial arts, the self-esteem improved, the bullying stopped. And but it's from those early years of feeling what it's like to be bullied, which helped me in the future to actually overcome bullying in a lot of kids that I teach. Which is so obviously, so it's good to reflect on that, because when I think back to it, if I hadn't experienced that, I wouldn't have became the person I am.
Firstly, I'm sorry to hear that you had to go through that, because I think these incidences, they leave a long-lasting impact on us, and it takes a lot of conscious effort to kind of work on, the feeling that they have left within us. Also, how we think about us at that point in time. And for a lot of listeners and people who are watching us today who have also had similar experiences, I would love to ask you that while you were going through that, and if you're okay sharing that, what did it make you feel about yourself? And when was the time when you thought, no, I have to get out of this feeling? Or was there someone around to help you with that?
Yeah, good question. I didn't want to go to school. Like in those days, we were very fortunate because the bullying would start and stop with school hours, where nowadays with social media, it's very different. But like I didn't want to go to school because I knew that, whether it was going to happen on the bus, whether it was going to be at school or on the way home, there was always going to be that risk that I would go through that emotion again. So it was tough because I had to pick myself up. And, when I'm looking back to this is late 70s, early 80s, there wasn't words for anxiety or, it was basically just we had to man up and we had to do it. And so there was no way I was getting out of school because I didn't feel like going. That just didn't happen. So every day was a bit of a challenge, and it was overcoming my fears early on. Fortunately for me, the bullying wasn't physical, but as we know, emotionally it can be just as bad. And as you say, who came into my life that probably helped? It was probably a combination of people, but definitely it was family support from when I started karate, because my instructor was my cousin and his younger brother was my good mate who we trained with. So I had that support all around. And I think just that little self-belief that I could actually, I could stand on my own 2 feet, and I had some skills that could help me. It just boosted my self-esteem. And once the self-esteem was increased, for some reason, the bullying just stopped. I didn't actually physically put a stop to it. I didn't actually do anything about it. I think just that inner belief that I had in myself just made the bullies move on to a new target.
What is most important for everyone to kind of, really understand over here is that when you really need to ask for help.
That's
So
correct.
and I think that's what Wayne has shown us, that he found someone and probably he shared something with the person, and then from there on, there was an opportunity that he found in kind of, going ahead and kind of sharing it with someone who actually had the tools or the kind of understanding to help him out of it. So you never know that if you're dealing with something, and if there's a person that you really believe in or you can confide in, go ahead and at least share, because you never know where that kind of, help connects you with the right people. So from there, when you started kind of, your journey of building yourself up, your self-belief to karate, how did that begin for you? How challenging was that initially, or was that so interesting for you that a new world opened for you? What were you feeling at that point in time?
Yeah, well, um, I had no preconceptions about what martial arts was. To be honest, I didn't even know what martial arts was. I just knew that I had a cousin who was becoming quite famous for competing in tournaments and coming into newspapers and things like that. And so his younger brother wanted to train. The parents were saying you should train with your older brother, so he asked me to come along with him. And I'd never seen it. I'd never watched any martial arts movies at that stage, so I was jumping into the unknown. And I can still remember today my first class. Like, everybody went left, I went right. Everybody used their right hand, I used my left. It was very, very funny. I can still see myself mucking everything up. And in those days, that was the late 70s. It was really popular. Like, there were so many people in the hall training that we were actually out the back training because we couldn't fit in. So it was a very popular thing at the time, and to me, I think because I'd tried team sports before and I enjoyed those, but there was something inside me that didn't like the fact that I could be doing my best, but then all of a sudden we could still lose because somebody made a mistake. So as soon as I discovered something individual where the buck stopped with me, and I realized it was all about my focus and my intensity, if I could get that right for me, then I would succeed. And so that's probably the aha moment, I suppose you'd say, when I was training as I was only 12, and it wasn't until I was training for 4 years before I actually started competing properly. So it was, but I just loved that idea of, I'd go home and practice and get it right, and then I could move on to the next step or the next level. So that was the thing for me that was special about martial arts. And obviously, not long after that, the Karate Kid movie came out, and then the whole world knew what was going on. Our dojos were starting to fill up with all these young wannabe Daniel-sans, and it was amazing. It was a great time to be doing martial arts, actually.
It's like someone hitting the jackpot with AI today before the AI had set off.
That's right. That's
like
right. That. Yeah. So if you had a little martial arts business in those days, it was like, the movie came out and just opened the doors for you. You became in the US, lots of dojos became rich instantly because they had over 100 new students show up each week.
Yeah. So, well, a great insight over there, Wayne. I think the first thing that I picked on was you just jumped into it. Like, you did not know what it was. Sometimes it's better not to know things. It's just better that way, I feel, because if you know how hard it's going to get, you may just back out from the very beginning itself. I sometimes feel like that. So that was interesting that you just completely jumped on. So I have a question over there, but before I ask you, there's something that I really noticed that you mentioned that uh, you know at the very beginning, like, you had no idea what you were doing, and you were just going opposite to the class, and now
Yep.
look at you are teaching so many people across the world. So this also shows, it is a testament for us, that if you like something, if you have that inkling that maybe, and you jump into it with all your heart, you never know where you land up in your life later on if you put that drive, if you put that discipline. And another thing that you mentioned was that uh, okay, I'm going to bring that up later on when I can put that into the right words. But I do want to ask you a question over here, which was back, when you mentioned that you just jumped into it without knowing it. How does that happen? That is so scary. If you want to, like, share a bit about that for our listeners today.
Yeah. So, well, fortunately, like I said, I had my cousin who was close to my age, so we were like, there was two of us that went in together. So I wasn't on my own, and we were both very raw to it. We both had no idea what to expect, so we sort of bounced off each other a little bit. But the big thing for me, and I suppose now thinking to what you just mentioned then, if I had have seen maybe a Bruce Lee movie or something before that, maybe it would have been a different mindset going in. I would have thought maybe I couldn't do it. But because I had no idea of what it was about, there was no doubt in my mind that I was just going to have a go. So there wasn't any fear in those days of I won't be able to do it or I won't be successful, because to me I was just joining in to help out a friend. And so it was like a companion thing to do, which was good. And it's what I've always taught a lot of my new students nowadays. If they can start training with a buddy, it makes life much better, because you've got somebody to bounce off, and when you're doing it well, you can get a pat on the back from them, and then when you're struggling, they can support you along as well. So, but yeah, and it was great times, and I still remember, like we were only tiny, we were skinny little Aussie kids, and I remember I didn't have a uniform to start with, so I was just training in a singlet, and it was in a place called Blacktown, which was northwest of Sydney as well, and yeah, it was great. It was a really good time, and probably that was my first sense of when you try and you don't give up, you can achieve. And even in small things like, one or two moves that I couldn't do the week before, but by my fourth lesson, I was doing the things that I couldn't do in lesson one. And that's the benefit of martial arts, and how it really does help people that haven't been successful in many things in their life. They realize that they can do it and they can achieve. And to me, that happened from week one.
What you're kind of sharing with us, it's okay to read about these things as a quote, or as an Instagram carousel or whatever, but when you hear these things in live stories, that people have actually done that, and what does that exactly mean, this is what it means, where it takes you. So friends, if you are a bit uncertain about where my consistent efforts are going to take me, this is where it can take you. If you are improving each day, even 1% or 0.5%, even that's fine.
That's it. And it's just taking that step to actually consciously, we call it conscious never-ending effort. So basically you're consciously trying to do the work, so you put in the effort, and eventually the results will come. And yeah, it's just put one foot in front of the other, just like you mentioned, like the old saying that you can only climb the highest mountains one step at a time.
Definitely, I can't agree more on that with you. And I believe what you have mentioned over here is something that I've also kind of experienced in my life, is that when you not think of something as big as something unachievable, the fear kind of creeps in if you see things from the point of outcome. This is the outcome someone has achieved, and if I can't match that degree of outcome, I won't even start. It's so daunting. But as I think you mentioned, that if you start with someone and it's from the point of view of learning, having fun, improving yourself, obviously having the goal of whatever your goal is. But I think fear, when it creeps in really early on, it cripples us. So it's just about changing the kind of mindset when you begin, because that's the most important thing when you begin. And once you have the momentum, once you have seen yourself succeed even a little bit, that builds the confidence, and that confidence is, I believe, like a compounding effect for your success. So from there on, Wade, I loved the fact that you mentioned that you found your thing, which is going solo.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that you mentioned that, because that shows that you were aware of what was working for you and what was not working for you. And besides sitting with yourself and thinking, why is it like that, why I can't be a team player or something like that, you were like, okay, this is what works for me, and I can still make good stuff out of it. That kind of a mindset is very, very important, to understand your strengths and work so much on that you become the 1% in the world. So how did that then journey begin from you, from there, your solo journey? If you can take us through the first couple of years. Yeah, would love to hear that.
Yeah, great. So I like what you said then about having fun, because that's the big thing. If you can enjoy it and have fun while you're in the process, it makes such a difference. And I'm sure if you want to think back to your school days, if I was to ask you who's your favorite teacher, I'm sure you have someone pops into your mind, and I'm sure you probably did better in that grade in that class than in most of the other classes, because you are having fun while you are learning. And that's the goal.
Absolutely.
That's the goal. So I was very fortunate. I was having a lot of fun. I was surrounded by peers that we progressed through the grades together, and we enjoyed it. It was our little thing between. There was about 4 or 5 of us that were really good mates that went through the whole grade together, and we had the family support as well. And the good thing with martial arts is you do have obvious goals. So obviously you start as a white belt, and then you want to progress through the belts and you move up the grades. Now we do things a lot better than what it was done in the old days. But in the old days, you would just train for 3 months. Then you would have your sensei come out, and then he would, like the head sensei, and he would do an exam. We had no idea what the exam was going to consist of. There was no structured curriculum in those days to us. So it was a little bit hit and miss. So that's where the anxiety for exam stress came in for martial arts in those days. So we would train for a few months, do a test, hopefully pass the test, and move on to the next. And over the years, we realized that probably wasn't the best roadmap. So we've improved it over the years. And nowadays, I look at how well it's structured now for our students, and it makes life much easier. But in those days, we didn't know anything better. So that was the way we did it. So we progressed through the grades. I think I actually failed my first grading, which was one of the best learning curves that I ever had. Yeah, so we were being a little bit ambitious. We'd only been training 6 weeks, and my cousin and I, we went to one of these gradings, and we failed. And because of that, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because I made sure that there was never happened again. And I needed to know exactly what, so I over delivered every time that I presented at gradings. I made sure I was more thorough than most, and so that was probably a really good learning curve for me. And which is, unfortunately, that stuff doesn't happen much anymore, because the new generations haven't got resilience, and we need those little setbacks to give us the resilience to move forward. So yeah, that was probably the first time I really self-reflected and thought, wow, something's like that didn't feel good. I didn't like that. I didn't like being told that I wasn't ready. So I made sure from then on that I was. So we progressed through the grades, and like I said, about 16, I started to go in competitions. And that was sort of a natural progression, because my cousin, who was our instructor, by then he was a New South Wales champion, and he was ready to go for Australian titles and things like that. So we sort of, we followed in his footsteps. And my first competition, I can still remember, because obviously I was a little guy. I was probably 50 kilos wringing wet when I was 16, and went in my first tournament, and fortunately made it to the final. And I can remember coming up against a guy in the final who looked like he was about 25. He was still in the under 16 division, but I was the little guy. He was the big guy. I'm sure he was shaving in those days, and it was quite daunting to me. But and I lost that first one. I lost that first final, and that really, again, it made me realize, well, I don't like silver. I want to get gold. And it made me realize, well, okay, I need to do a little bit more work, and I need to be faster than these guys. So that's when a lot of my effort was focused on my speed, and not so much trying to be stronger than them, but being faster than them. Because obviously, if you can get your glove or your foot on the target before they do, you get the point. So that was my big learning point about, okay, I need to be faster, because I'm not going to be bigger, but I can definitely be faster. And so that probably took about 4 years before that obvious fact dawned on me, thanks to that guy that beat me. So there's always even though you come out of there losing, there's always a bonus for it.
Absolutely. And I think what a masterclass right there on, understanding that what's more important, to be able to gauge what your strength is and to work on that, and just place your bets on your strengths. I think that is so, so important. And that is also, I think that goes for life as well. Whichever profession that someone is or you want to be in, and that definitely, I think 8 billion people out there.
Wow.
And obviously, most of us are in certain profession, because there are not 8 billion professions out there. I think so. So not everyone is doing a different work, but everyone is unique. in the same industry as well. So what is your strength? Work on your strength. That is so good. I like it. I think there was a lot of things happening over there, Wayne. I think the first thing that you mentioned was, I think it's sort of a different thing when the structure is not out there. You can still, either take advantage of the loopholes, or you can make the best of the loopholes, or you can, create something of your own that suits best. There's a bit of a freedom, but there's a bit of a confusion as well, but it's great. It's great to, kind of figure out things as you go, where things are not set into the standards, because sometimes when things are set into the standards, your mind cannot imagine beyond that. But
Mm.
that's, I think, that's all good. uh there's always pros and cons for everything, and I think it may look like different for you. You may have a different view about this, but this is what I kind of gauged. um from here, as you mentioned, that was your first experience, was to taste failure. It is not that you failed, it's just that you taste failure, which helped you understand that what could be done better, and that is so important to begin with. So while you were doing all these things, you were surrounded by the right people, which is so important. If you want to grow in certain profession, it's important to have people around that who have been in that profession, done lots more in that profession, and did that better, so that you can learn from them. And but while you were growing up, and I think when you reach your late teens, early 20s, there's always a question of how is one going to sustain themselves financially? What is your secure future, that as people talk about? So for you, obviously being in martial arts and having that eye of being the world champion, or I don't know, maybe you had that at that point in time, or I think you may have had. How did you manage that? Or because there might be voices around you who may have given you that advice. How did that work out for you?
And I had no goal of being a world champion, which is quite, yeah, which is quite amazing, because the international side of martial arts hadn't even dawned on me at that point. I was quite I was probably 15, 16 before I started to compete in state championships, which is New South Wales titles. And the year that was probably the catapult that got me into competition big time was I placed fourth in the New South Wales titles, and
Oh, wow.
I was 17, and there was two boys in the first and second places that obviously they make up the New South Wales team. And those boys decided to focus on their academics, because it's year 12 at school, so that's obviously a little bit more um, academically focused. So they chose to focus on that and not go to the national titles, because it was over in Perth, Western Australia. So it was quite expensive. And so then what happened was the guys that came third and fourth, we got moved up into the first and second spot. So basically I got selected in the New South Wales team purely by chance, thanks to those guys focusing on their academics. I had a motorbike that I used to ride, and I had to sell the motorbike to pay for the airfare. So I had to really choose between which pastime I wanted to put my energy into, and karate became it. So I sold the motorbike, that paid for the airfare. Went over to the national championships in Perth, and I became the national champion that year. So I won the title, and that was my first time as an Australian champion. But it was also that opened my eyes to, oh, maybe when I turn 18, there is more. There is more to it. There's not just competing in Australia. I could probably go overseas if I'm fortunate enough. So when I won that was probably August, and that was 1985. So then my goals were set. Then the next year I turned senior, and I was going to go for it. So there was no goal for world championships. It was just an event that fell in my lap, and I was fortunate to get picked in the team by default. And it was, that was my first gold medal. Like, the first gold medal I ever won was that national championship. So I won the nationals before I won the state. I did it back to front. So it was quite interesting. But yeah, there was no goal for world championship. That was something that just evolved from that fortunate event. And I thank those guys to this day for actually stepping out. I hope they did well in their studies, because it catapulted me to become Australian champion.
This is incredible, Wayne. I mean, and thank you so much for sharing that in all your in that honesty, with everything, because I feel this also makes me think, when something is meant for you, it finds a way. But that is like an opportunity that's presented to you, and you are the one who have to make a decision, because at
Mm.
that point in time, although things were in your favor, that you got moved up into the rank and you were offered that um, you know choice, that whether you want to go or not. And also for you as well, it was a challenge to make the airfare work, but you did make a choice. You did put all your faith into it. And interestingly, maybe you were not at that point in time when you were kind of really thinking of your academics or career. Maybe timing was good, but still I feel when you're presented with an opportunity that aligns with you, it is still a choice. You
That's
could
right.
have said no, or you could have just been a little, in confusion. Should I be selling my motorbike? Will this even make sense? So I think it's about taking that chance when it presents itself. And for everyone who's listening to us today, whatever phase of life that you are in, if you've been really wanting something, or you've been really invested in something, and someday the opportunity presents itself, it's going to be a choice. So it's only one life that you have. If you think that you can make that take that chance, definitely go for it. And if it doesn't happen, that's all good. You've at least taken a chance, and things can be rebuilt if you don't have a lot of responsibilities with you, which is also understandable, I think, to each their own. But I love this fact, coming back to your story. So from there on, I would love to understand your tenure as a student, because then you started competing in international championship, and you've represented Australia, almost 15 times over 17 years, for the
Yeah.
17 years, I'm sure. So I think it's great to win once, but to sustain that, I think that's a challenge. I really believe that's a challenge, because then comes in all sorts of distractions. You're the world champion, everyone wants to get connected with you, everyone you never knew on the earth has now, they know you, or they want to be associated with you, left, right, and center. How did you kind of manage that? How did you know who were the right people to kind of be with, and actually concentrate on your own craft, and be that 15 times world champion for the 17 years? And after that, I would love to know your time as a teacher as well. But
Yeah.
first, we love to kind of get to know this.
Great, great. Well, yeah, like as I mentioned, so my first win, my first gold was the national championship. And then that's why I have a really big thing. And like our motto with everything that we've done with our martial arts and now with our children's safety programs and our global wellness academy is all about instilling self-esteem. So I find now, if I reflect back on myself, that first win, that gold medal, that made me believe that I could do it. So then once I went back to New South Wales and then we competed in state titles, I think I won 7 in a row after that, because I believed I could do it. And I had the proof, I had the medal from the nationals, and then from then on, it just gave me, like, success breeds success. And I was surrounded by a team of very successful colleagues, and they were going for national titles at the same time. So we trained really well together. I had a wonderful sensei at that time who has been a lifelong mentor for me now, and he was actually he was competing as well, but he was competing in the artistic side of it. And so basically we followed his attitude, his attitude to training, and trying to always striving to find something, that little extra that would make him better. So as a team, he took us all under his wing, put us all together, and we went from there. So in the competition side of things, it became really exciting. My first ever world championships was the year after I won my first nationals. So basically, I was only young. I made the Australian team when I was 17, turning 18. I won the Australian title against the men in those days, and in those days, the juniors never saw the seniors, and vice versa. So I've rocked up as this young, skinny kid in the under 60 kilo division, and I won the national title. And in that year, the world championships were being held in Sydney, Australia. So it was the first time they'd been to Australia, and I was fortunate to head off to the Institute of Sport as a young guy. That's why I was the youngest guy in the Australian team at the time, and I was really fortunate. There were some older guys in the team that just took me under their wing and made sure I knew who were the people to focus on training with, who to try and, what coaches were the best coaches to listen to. And from that point on, I was taught early that it's not about just your efforts. It's actually aligning yourself with the right people that are going to get the best out of you. And that's when I got my interest sparked in strength and conditioning, because we were at the Institute of Sport where we had to go to the gym and learn a lot about our fitness levels. So that sparked my interest in anatomy and how we can make the body better. And obviously I was I'm the kind of person that doesn't like to be just told to do something. I want to know why I have to do it. So that got me interested in the field of human movement and sports science. So that's what got me heading into the personal training later in life because of that. But so I went to the world titles. Fortunately, out of three of us in the division, they dropped it down to two. I was one of the two that went, and in front of my family and friends. So normally a world championship, you're there on your own with the Australian team in another country. So I was very fortunate that I had my first one at home, had the family and friends there, and I got a little bit overexcited in the division, and I hit the other guy a little bit too hard, and I got disqualified. So first attempt representing Australia, and I knocked the other guy out. Poor guy from Sweden, I knocked him out and got disqualified. So again, it's a learning curve. So then it taught me that I let the moment overwhelm me. The nerves got to me, and I just made the wrong choice. I punched high when I should have punched low, and the event was over. But from that point on, then it made me realize that, well, it's not all about being fastest or the fittest. It's also about being the smartest and learning tactics and strategy. And so then it was the following year that then I had the success world championship wise over in Penang in Malaysia, which was great. And then, like you said, choosing who to be around and who to listen to and who not to listen to. The good thing about martial arts is we have our personal coaches, and then we have our head of style. And fortunately for me, our head of style and personal coach was the same person. So I was just really fortunate to be mentored by somebody who was a successful businessman. He had his own chain of fitness centers as well. His name was Richard Chu, and to this day he's one of my dearest friends. But it was very funny because the other day we sent me a message about something, and he was asking me. He said, "Where's that kid gone to that I used to train?" So like here we are, we're both adults now with our families, and we've achieved so many things, but we're still connected, all these years later. So which is what that's 41 years later. And I was just really fortunate that I had people like him in my corner. And so there wasn't really any choosing who to hang around and who to listen to, because fortunately we didn't have any distractions. Like a lot of professional sport nowadays, where they have managers coming in and they have coaches trying to, poach students from one to the other. We didn't have any of those problems. We were just loyal to our instructor, and it all paid off. And that was late 80s. And from then on, that shaped me into who I am today. And that's obviously, I apply all of that, what I learned from him in those days, to how we apply business, even parenting. My wife and I run a successful wellness academy now, and we apply that same never give up attitude that I learned from when I was very young. And also the listening that I learned from being an instructor. We apply that now in every conversation. So, we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you should be doing double the listening to what you are speaking. And we apply that to everything we do as well, because everyone has something to be heard, and the more you listen and people feel validated, it's gonna help with anything from family disputes to health and wellness to self-esteem to child safety, everything. So it's I was just really fortunate, and it's one of those things. Obviously, I had to work to achieve what I achieved, but I was surrounded by the right people at the right time.
Firstly, thank you so much, Richard. Wherever you are, in case if you ever hear this podcast, or happy to send this snippet to you, I think because of your decision of working along with Mr. Wayne, we have someone who is able to kind of impact and help a lot of people across the globe with his talent, with his hard work as well. And it's so important to have the right people around us while we are in that phase of, growing, to be consistent, to be able to sustain that, the caliber that we have worked on, and not, get things to our head, but keep going and every time keep going in a way that this is a first time. Very interestingly, I like the fact that you remember the lessons that you've learned from your, the first time that you lost that match, and the second time when you knocked out the pursuing guy. It's interesting that you still remember, what went wrong, and what you learned out of it, because I think that keeps you going. And love to know that, what, after so many years, like, not that I am kind of emphasizing on your age, love that in the amazing, glorious time that you have spent on the planet Earth so far, that how you kept reinventing yourself, or kept, just upgrading yourself, never stopped. And I think that's what it is. We are always a student of life, and you especially. I think if someone is a student of a sport throughout their life, they have immense, resilience, the kind of consistency that they have. If you really love a sport, I think you can see that passion, that discipline. It kind of makes you in a bit of a different human being, I feel, which is great, because that trickles down in every area of your life if you do the right way. And I love that, Wayne, that what you're doing with your family today, and how you and your wife has, come up together with this wellness, um, you know, brand for everyone. How you help people out there in different countries, and I think it is so important at this point in time in life that we are over there helping people with our own experiences and our own techniques that can help people elevate, and especially help build confidence in them, help build resilience in them, and help build a bit of, kind of empower them to believe in themselves. It's so important for everyone to, if anyone is able to just do that, I think the individual can themselves find out what they have in them to do. It's just about, creating that sort of a belief. It's nice, it would be amazing if someone does that on their own, but sometimes you need that help, because of the, not everyone gets the right environment while they're growing up. Not everyone gets the right people while they're navigating their life through the profession or personal life. And when someone gets into not in the right company repeatedly, it really impacts their, the way the person really shapes into. So everyone who's listening to us, I know that you've enjoyed listening to Wayne, this amazing person, and there's lots more to learn about him. So I will leave a link in the show notes to learn more, because there's more that I would love to cover, but I only have so much time with Wayne MacDonald today. So before we take Wayne's leave, I do have a few more questions to ask, and which is from the point of view that we have known you as a student so far in your life, and I think there might have been n number of lessons, but you've already, shared the top two lessons that you learned from the biggest failures. I would say these biggest failures because of where you failed, the platform where you failed, the weight of that is big.
That's great.
No failure is small or big. Every failure teaches you, and that's the purpose of the kind of, challenges that you have. But when you do fail at the world stage, it impacts people differently, because then people start seeing you differently. So if you're able to overcome that, kudos to you. So moving on from that, coming to the next phase of your life, when you became the teacher of the students across the globe, if you can take us through the top three learnings that you had from that experience so far.
Interesting question. That's good. One thing where you mentioned too you talked about people, if they're not surrounded by the right people, that they can still strive to improve. And that's one big thing we talk about now is with wellness and your own body, active healing. So you don't go to the doctor and say, doctor, fix me. You need to take a look at yourself and actually work on it yourself, which is really important. So that's something with every aspect in life, because no one's going to do it for you. You have to take hold of it yourself and go for it. The teaching was, I was thrown into teaching at 16. So basically, I was teaching a children's class. And my cousin, who was the instructor at the time, he said to me that if you can teach children, you can teach anybody. And so that's when I started. I was 16, teaching, I think, 8-year-olds up to about 12 at the time. And then my cousin was fortunate to get an opportunity to work somewhere else, and so he moved away, and then all of a sudden, the club of adults also needed an instructor. So here I was, 16. I ended up teaching a school full of adults as well. So I was chucked in the deep end for teaching from a very young age, and I've learnt. I'm sure I wasn't a good instructor in those days. People tell me that I was, but I'm sure I wasn't. But what I've evolved into is basically because of that self-reflection, having a look at yourself and realizing that things can be done better. And I was very fortunate. My mentor, Richard, that we talked about, his father was the founder of the karate style worldwide. And unfortunately, in the mid-90s, he passed away. And a lot of responsibility was then put onto Richard to then take hold of the baton and fly the flag for the family. And he needed somebody to help, and I was very fortunate that he asked me to become the world chief instructor. So he was the head of style and I was the world chief instructor. So that's when I got thrown into teaching on a global scale. And it was at first very daunting, and I had those feelings of, am I good enough, which we mentioned before about like when I first started competing in tournaments. And then when I realized that I had a lot to offer, and I was basically teaching from experience. So we talked about the word empathy before. It didn't matter where I was teaching, what country, what level of student I was teaching, I put myself back into their shoes. And I would always look at, well, what errors did I make when I was learning this skill or this part of training? And then I would think back to myself, reflect on what helped me, and then I would try and portray it in that way. And I think the big thing for students, if they know that the sensei or the instructor is genuinely interested in them getting better, then that association with the sensei comes in. They get engaged with the sensei. It makes all the difference. And that's where that self-esteem comes from, because obviously I try and make sure if I'm teaching a class of 10 or I'm teaching a class of 100, I still try to make sure that I engage with every student throughout that time. And that engagement, making them realize that they are connected to the instructor, it makes me more human to them, and they realize, well, I've been through the same struggles they have, and I've got through there and I've come out to who I am today. It helps them with their self-esteem, and they move forward as well. So the teaching side of things was I didn't really have a choice. I got chucked in. I loved it, and I actually, through my years of setting up our full-time dojo and the success that we had in Australia, all the national champions that we produced, my wife and I got more of a buzz from actually getting other people to achieve titles than what it was for ourselves. And when we talk titles, only 30% of our whole club used to compete in tournaments. The rest was actually just becoming better people, becoming more confident, increasing their self-esteem, and becoming better people. So that was our biggest buzz, seeing that from our teaching to feel that we had a small part in that person's success in life. That was the real thing.
Thank you so much, Wayne, for sharing that with us. I think a lot of things sort of just they just were they just came into your life, and you just picked them up and you made the most out of it, which is also a great learning. Sometimes you go with the flow and make the most out of it. If it kind of really resonates with you somewhere, it kind of you do still have some kind of semblance with that thing in your life. It aligns in certain way. And there are a lot of questions I would love to ask you. Maybe if you would love to come back on the show sometime else,
Yeah, no
can
problem.
dig a bit more.
Yeah.
Amazing, can dig a bit more deep into those things. But thank you so much for being on the First Step Ever, taking us through your amazing story, uh, actually showing us the exact examples of what we read out there, in the books, in the bestseller books, or on Instagrams, or the gurus saying all those things, which was being consistent, having the right people around, and once you're given an opportunity, making the choice that you have to see where it takes you. This is so amazing. Thank you so much for sharing the lived experiences that you had. Before we take your leave, I always request my guest speakers to leave our listeners with the quote or a saying that they really resonate with. But for you, I like to add something to that as well after you share the quote is, if there's one thing that has impressed you the most in the present generation. I know what has not impressed you, but if something that has impressed you, please feel free to share with our young listeners today.
I think the biggest thing is what amazes me about the youth of today is their ability to adapt on the run to something really quick. So, like, technology is flying, as we know, and for us people who've been on the planet a long time, like you mentioned, sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming. But what I'm really amazed is with the kids of today is they just adapt and they just go with it, and then they find the best way to use that for their own success. Especially somebody your age who's in the field that you're in at the moment, and how you've jumped in and you've, like, look at this amazing little virtual studio that we're in right now, and you've grabbed hold of technology and you're making it work for you at whatever part of the world you're in. You don't need to be in the same studio. It's quite amazing. So that's what impresses me about them. What they need to do and have a little bit more of is a little bit more resilience. So when things don't go their way, they can actually, it's not a reset on a video game, that life is going to throw curveballs at them, and they need to actually be able to strive for that little bit more. But the biggest thing, and for me to leave with you, is that whether it's from our wellness academy, whether it's from our karate school, our children's safety program, the goal that we have and that everybody should have is that they need to leave an impact on somebody else's life in a positive way. And obviously we're fortunate to do it we have a ripple effect, because obviously what we teach the children, those children become parents one day and they'll pass on to their kids. So we're going to have a ripple effect along that way. But everyone has something to contribute to the world. And if they can actually make someone else's life a little bit better than what it was before they met, then that's what we're after.
Love that. Thank you so much for your time on my first ever podcast, Wayne. It's been lovely, lovely knowing you and chatting with you, and also getting to know a bit more about your program. I will definitely leave the links below for everyone who's interested. If you're a parent listening to it, I think this is something that you can consider. But if you are a youngster listening to it, you can also consider, because I think at this point in time in the life, the kind of life that we are living, what is really most important is to be able to understand ourselves better, to have that quiet time and have a lot of belief in ourselves, because there's a lot of noise out there already ready to shut you down. But
That's right.
You really need to pay attention to who you are and do what you want in your life. So thank you so much, Wayne, for being on this podcast.
My pleasure. It was great.
And thank you. And for all my listeners out there, as I always say, start believing in yourself and keep believing in yourself. See you until next time. Please do give ratings and please do write your comments. And you can directly reach out to me on my first step ever _IN. That's my Instagram handle. A little about myself. I have always loved performing on stage, acting, speaking, and just emoting myself. So I use these mediums different ways so that I can connect with people, help them, empower them, infotain them, which is to inform them and entertain them. If you would like to collaborate for any opportunities, more than welcome to connect with me on my Instagram handle. Thank you.